The controllers for the Nintendo Switch are remarkably robust considering the pounding that they get in games like Mario Kart. Most of the time, if they go wrong, they can be fixed in the settings, but sometimes it's a hardware problem. Like here, when I'm getting absolutely nothing when I press the SL button. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to fix that, all in less than 10 minutes. First of all, let's just test pressing SL again with the wrist strap removed, just to check that it isn't the sticky outer button. But still no response, so we're going to have to dig deeper and get right inside the Joy-Con. For this, we're going to need a few specialist tools. First of all, a small crosshead screwdriver, size 00. Then a Y-shaped screwdriver of the same size to get inside the casing itself. Useful, but not essential, is a good quality nylon spudger, with a flat end to help open the case, and a pointy one for the fiddly bits we meet inside. Finally, a pair of precision tweezers, preferably with non-conductive tips. Now I've treated myself to some fancy ones, and even then, if I was buying the whole lot brand new, all the tools I need would cost me less than £25. The replacement parts are even cheaper, and they're readily available on eBay and other sites. Just search Switch JoyCon SL. They usually come in pairs or singly, but if you do buy just the one, make sure you get the correct side for your controller. Now I've gone for the pair, partly to demonstrate the difference, and both together cost just over £5, including postage. Now that we've got everything ready, tools and spare parts, we can get on with the repair, starting with the removal of the 4 Y-shaped screws that hold the case together. They're all easily accessible and straightforward to remove, but you do need our specialist screwdriver, and don't be tempted to botch it with something else, or you'll strip the heads and then you'll never get them out. Now I'm deliberately doing this video in pretty much real time, including the removal of all 4 screws and nothing speeded up, to show that it really can be done in less than 10 minutes. Even the filming took me around about 35 minutes, and that includes all the setups and any retakes. But it's not long before all 4 screws are out and safely put to one side for later. Now we need to get that case open, starting by prising apart the rounded end, and then sliding your thumbnail or spudger if you're using one, along that straight edge, the only fiddly bit being around the buttons at the top. And don't worry, there's nothing loose inside, and there's nothing that will unexpectedly ping off. And with the case open, we can see what we're dealing with. Our 2 halves are still connected by 2 ribbon cables, one for the recharging connector and the other for the SL/SR buttons, that part that we're going to replace. And we can go ahead and remove those 2 cross-headed screws, holding the plastic part nice and firmly so we don't stress either of the cables. And when the tiny screw's out, we can put it to one side with the others. The screwdriver's magnetic tip makes this super easy, reducing the risk of finger fumbling and dropping the tiny piece into the other side, but sometimes it's a little reluctant to let go. Now this next phase is optional, and you can leave that ribbon cable attached, but I prefer to give myself as much space as possible, and removing it is relatively straightforward, by flipping up the plastic catch at the back of the connector, and gently easing out the ribbon cable, taking our time and being very careful not to damage it. Then with that half of the casing out of the way, it's much easier to get at the part that needs replacing. The cable connector for this has the clip at the front, and again that just needs to be flipped up to release the cable, which comes out really easily, just sitting on the contacts rather than pushed into them like on our other one. Annoyingly, while it's easy to open the clip on the connector, there isn't really the headroom to get above it to close it, so we're going to have to do a tiny bit more disassembly to make a bit more space. First of all, removing the battery from its tray, easing it up off of the bit of double-sided sticky tape that's there to stop it dropping out during assembly. Then we need to remove 2 of the 4 screws that are revealed, just the shallower ones. The 2 deeper ones hold the circuit board in place underneath, and we can leave those alone. It really wouldn't have been that difficult to design in a little recess in the battery tray near where my thumb is, and we could have got to that clip to close it, without going through this stage. Let's hope somebody from Nintendo is watching, and they can make that little improvement. But no great hardship, and there's just one more screw to remove, which is off to the side. On the right hand Joy-Con, they're in a slightly different position, and you don't have to lift out the battery to get to them, but otherwise the process is much the same. Now I don't need to remove this part altogether, I just need to lift it slightly to get access to that clip, and that's as far as I need to go, and I can turn my attention to the part itself. As I said at the beginning, left and right are different, and it's important to order the right one, So if you're at all unsure, get the pair and you can match it to the old one. Now we come to the fiddly bit, which is fitting the ribbon cable. Lifting the battery tray slightly, we need to make sure our clip is in the upright position. Then, very carefully, lower the end of the ribbon cable onto the contacts of the connector using our tweezers. It slots over lugs on either side, but it's still really easy to dislodge, so you do need nerves of steel. Then raising the battery tray again, we need to find the top of our clip and flick it shut, checking that the cable is secure. And after a quick sit down to recover, give it a test. Then we can start reassembly, starting by resecuring the battery tray. And as we only lifted it up rather than removing it completely, that's really easy. Starting with that outlier screw, then lifting the battery out again, just enough to reveal the holes for the screws below, which we can replace one by one. The magnetic tip of the screwdriver, making it easy to lower them into place. Now I'm pretty sure that those 3 screws are the same as those that hold the board in place, but out of habit I keep the bits for each stage separate, and I know I'm putting back in the ones I took out. Then when everything is secure, I can replace the battery, pressing it firmly into place. Reassembly is exactly in reverse order, and next up is the other ribbon cable, the one that's for recharging the battery and whatever else it does when connected to the main switch unit. Once again, this is a bit fiddly, but after a couple of goes, I've managed to line it up and push it right into the connector. Then with the pointy end of the spudger, I can flick down the clip. One advantage of separating the 2 halves of the shell is that it's less likely for those 3 buttons to drop out of their holes. But it's not a big problem if they do, just make sure they go back in the right ones, and the right way up. They'll be held in securely as soon as our new board is screwed back into place. That first screw is a bit tricky to get lined up, but the second one is much easier, greatly assisted once again by the magnetic tip of the screwdriver. Now you can see that our brand new ribbon cable has already got a bit of a crease where it folds back on itself over the battery from doing a couple of retakes for the film. But that crease is about to become a firm fold as we close up the case and clip it shut. Now it does seem that that fold in the ribbon cable was probably the point of failure for our button, but our replacement is working perfectly. With the case clipped shut and our button tested, all that remains is to replace the 4 screws that hold the case together. Again, I'm going to show this in real time, and if you take a look at the counter, you'll actually see we've managed to get the whole project in under 8 minutes. But please do this at your own pace. There are some fragile elements, like those ribbon cables, and the tiny screws are easy to drop if you're rushing. I really only set the 10-minute time challenge to prove how doable the project is. But then I've done it before, and presumably, if you're watching this video, this will be your first time, and you'll need to watch and re-watch some of the critical stages. Now feel free to fast forward to the end, but I just thought I'd recap on the tools. The 2 screwdrivers came as part of a set from Amazon, along with the slightly larger tri-wing, which I think gets used for other parts of the Switch. For the spudger and the precision tweezers, I went to one of my favourite Raspberry Pi suppliers, but there will be lots of other places you'll be able to get them too, and you certainly don't necessarily need such a fancy pants pair of tweezers. But all of them are going to be an investment for the future, and certainly much cheaper than buying a new JoyCon, or probably even getting it repaired, and I've avoided all the hassle that would entail. And now, with a glow of satisfaction for a job well done, I can get on with playing some of my favourite games.